Hello YouTube, and welcome to a new installment of Peers of Wisdom. Today featuring Devon Larratt. You know, when I started this series, my goal was to be able to pinpoint characteristics in great men that I would be then able to impress upon you, to help you in your own journey, to have your own success. But something I realized with time is that there was danger in that, because in putting the spotlight on these very strong personalities, these great men, there was the risk of turning the people that were going to receive the information into fanboys. And that is sort of the paradox of strong personalities. You develop your personality for yourself first and foremost, but also for people around you. Because you become a beacon, you become a role model. But for some, this great thing turns into a disaster because they can't just imitate. They can't just take the great and leave the rest. They have to become. They try to become you. And the worst thing you can do in this life is to try and become someone else. I wanted to talk about Devon today because he strikes me as someone who has that very strong identity, who clearly developed himself by himself for himself, but also who has that special something that is going to inspire others, not to become like him, not to become his fanboys, but to become the best version of themselves. When you look up to someone, one or two things can happen. You either stagnate because now you are satisfied with their own successes and you start to live your life vicariously through them. So in a sense, their personality that is a strong black hole is sucking you in, and you're the small planet that is stuck in the orbit of the black hole and eventually gets swallowed. That's the death of identity. Or you use the momentum for something greater. And maybe small portions of rock are going to amass themselves around you and you're going to become a bigger planet. And at some point, you're going to leave the orbit of the black hole. The gravitational pull of the black hole is not going to have a hold on you anymore. And that is when you spread your wings. But it's interesting to look at it from the perspective that even people like me, and I'm sure some of you regard as a role model, has this role model. And Devon Larratt is one such man, because before becoming the face of arm wrestling, which is something that is fairly recent, he was on YouTube already. He was a presence. And he was always someone that I regarded with great respect and fondness because I always learned stuff from the guy. And it's rare. No false modesty here. I don't have much to learn from people in general. And on YouTube Fitness, for the most part, I pick and choose. So out of 10 videos that a guy puts out, I might learn from one or two. With Devon, it's like 100% strike chance. Every time I click on his video, I'm going to learn something. Even if it's 40 seconds of him walking through the woods and just shooting the shit, he will at some point drop a pearl of wisdom. This man has this ability. And therefore, I want to share with you. I'm not going to keep that treasure to myself. Thankfully, he's now mainstream, but I think that many people stop at the surface level. Because Devon is a meathead, right? Just like all of the people I've covered in this series so far. If you just look at the exterior, you see a barbarian. But if you actually look inside and you look in depth, you look at an educated barbarian. And that is what the greatness is. But if you're incapable of doing that work, you're not going to be able to access the wisdom. So, if I were to describe Devon, I would utilize three adjectives in particular. The first one is brave, the second one is crafty, and the third one is deranged. I want to paint the identity and the personality of Devon Larratt because for each of these that I just shared with you, there is something to learn. And for each of these, there is also a subtext, a subtitle. And for the first chapter, Brave, the subtitle is the willingness to face a tiger. I believe that this is the main and the first characteristic and personality trait that Devon Larratt possesses and that we can all learn from. And to be able to speak about that very characteristic in particular, I think that the best thing to do is to just go back a few weeks. Go back to the most recent arm wrestling match that Devon Larratt had in his career. And that was, for those of you that follow the scene, the bout against Devon. It was a match for the ages. Some people describe it as the most important arm wrestling match of all time. I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but it was great entertainment. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because, unlike what you might think, Devon didn't win. He actually got entirely crushed. And so you could think, well, what exactly is the point? How could there be wisdom in defeat? I would retort to that there is more wisdom in defeat than in victory. Because victory teaches you nothing for the most part, whereas defeat is a wealth of wisdom. And this is a lesson I learned from Devon, because he is someone with a lot of bravado, a lot of machismo. But interestingly enough, it's always something that he backs up. Meaning that a lot of people have big mouths and they speak all the time and they say all these great things, but nothing ever happens. Devon is the same, but when he promises something, he actually delivers. In this case, the match was teased for an entire year, but it eventually occurred. And the reason why it's so strange that it actually took place is because, as the face of the sport, you have to understand one thing. Devon Larratt could have dodged that match, meaning that it's very common in fighting sports in particular for the top dog, or at least the guy who draws the most spectators, to use his time very sparingly and to avoid very dangerous opponents. Why? Or because there is a risk involved. Why would you try a match where you're facing someone that has the potential to actually beat you and ruin your legacy? Why not just dodge until you get an easy opponent, easy money, and more fame? He never did that. He never attempted to do that because he is a man who is in constant pursuit of new challenges, and challenges that put him at risk of actually losing, because these are the only worthy challenges. And so he actually entered the Levin match as a complete underdog. Beyond the fanboys that don't really know much about arm wrestling, anyone else knew that he had almost 0% chance of winning. Levin is just way too strong. And yet he entered the fight without any fear, willingly. And there is bravado in that. This is incredibly brave. That is what I call the willingness to face a tiger. You're going to face the tiger. You don't know if you're going to win. And chances are you're going to lose because it's a tiger. The reason why I use tiger is because if you don't know who Levin is, picture a silverback gorilla that is like partly shaved, and you have Levin. Like, that's pretty much what the guy is. If I were on the street and I saw him from the back, I would call the local zoo and be like, hey, like one of your gorilla escaped. He's right in front of me. No, that's not a gorilla, that's Levin. That's the biggest arm wrestler I've ever seen in my life. He is a monster. It is the best way to describe him. Actually, I think that comparing him to a tiger is a little bit insulting for him, because he looks bigger than a tiger. He's like a saber-toothed tiger. He's like a specific type of human that should have went extinct, but somehow is still there. And of course, I understand that he didn't get like this naturally, but it is still really impressive. And the most impressive thing is the fact that there are people out there willing to arm wrestle with him. In comparison, I think that if I were to arm wrestle Levin, it's not just he would break my arm. I think that he would tear my arm out of the socket, and then he would use it like as an ornament in his bedroom. And I would be armless. And I wouldn't even have anything to say to it because, I mean, Levin took your arm. What are you going to do? You're going to fight him to get your arm back? No, you have one arm for the rest of your life and that's it. Devon Larratt went and actually faced that guy willingly. Like, there was no gun to his head. He went into it because he wanted the challenge, and challenge he received, right? The fight was actually highly skewed towards Levin, and that is for a very simple reason. It's because Levin was 100 pounds heavier than Devon, so much bigger, and also he was 15 years younger. So it was a complete mismatch. I understand that experience is important in arm wrestling, but again, it's like saying, yeah, if you have experience in judo, it's going to help you against a tiger. I don't think so. And therefore, this is why I respect Devon Larratt even more. It's because he knew he was outmatched, he knew he had almost no chance, and yet he went in. And it's something that across the board he's always done. He has been the face of the sport for a long time, and he never tried to actually abuse that popularity. He always accepted challenges. Case in point, for example, the Siplenkov match. Siplenkov, again, a Russian guy who was nicknamed Chernobyl because his arms looked like blown out of proportion. Also one of the strongest arm wrestlers in existence, some would say the strongest before he had all of his health complications. Devon went in and battled that guy as well with his weak arm. He had surgery, I think, on his right arm, and maybe I'm incorrect, I might be switching the two, but he arm wrestled the strongest arm wrestler in the world with his arm that wasn't his strongest weapon. And of course he lost, but can you imagine that? Actually, I heard Devon describe the match at some point. It felt like Siplenkov was ripping through his chest every time he got pinned, because it felt like the structural integrity of his thoracic spine was being destroyed with each bout. And yet he came back. And I say that because he did the same with Levin. In the match against Levin, he got injured. His bicep got partially torn. Guess what he did? He went right back in. The two bouts before him, every single time the guy got injured, they pulled out. They were like, I'm out. Like, the muscle is torn, I'm not going to continue. Not Devon. Devon is like, oh, a torn muscle? Cute. Let me arm wrestle again. And again, against Levon, the guy that just tore the bicep. He went in and he arm wrestled again. This is highly impressive. It's highly courageous. It's also insanely crazy. But that's what being brave is. Being brave is not being reasonable. And it's something that I'm going to argue again afterwards. But what we can learn from this is the fact that here is a man who was at the top of the sport for a long time and yet never shied away from a challenge, which explains the first statement. The reason why he was always at the top is because he always had the willingness to climb at the top. Even if he knew that the mountain could potentially kill him, he never shied away from a challenge, and that is absolutely beautiful. Because even though there was little doubt he was going to lose, he never let that thought paralyze his mind and extinguish his thirst for victory. And that is the mark of a true champion. People who lose one time and then get discouraged and leave and are afraid afterwards, these guys don't go anywhere. These guys don't leave a legacy. I can tell you for a fact that in 50 years, people are still going to be talking about Devon Larratt. Why? Because he left his mark. Because he is brave. He is brave. Like in the old legends, when we talk about the heroes of the past, do you talk about the guy that stayed at the village and just, I don't know, was watching the chicken? Or do you actually talk about the guy that was chasing the tiger that kept killing the chicken and maybe got even killed by the tiger in defense of the village and their resources? The hero is going to be the second guy. The first guy, no one remembers his name. He's going to disappear in the ethers of history. And that is for a good reason. It's because we only remember winners. And even though Devon lost, he is still, in my eyes, and in many people's eyes, a winner. Because the very fact that he was able to accept that challenge is the victory in and out itself. And I know that some people don't understand that. You know, the place where I live, sadly, I didn't have the ability to purchase the pay-per-view, so I had to actually pirate the match. And I ended up in an internet chat room, which, as we all know, are very courteous places where people are very polite and not racist or stupid at all. So I had the displeasure to actually see these people chat as I was watching the match, and some of the shit I was reading made me laugh because these people were making fun of Devon. Like, oh, he's so stupid, like, of course he was going to lose, why would he actually even try? It was so obvious. They would make fun of his actual catchphrase, which is the title of the video, no limits. A catchphrase that I think represents Devon to a great extent because it's the perfect motto for him. And it also shows that these people don't understand that motto. No limits doesn't mean that you never lose. It's not called no defeat. It's no limits. A limitation is not defined by victory or defeat. The man that refuses to engage in battle because he fears defeat, that man has limits. This is what the limits are, and these idiots in the chat room didn't get that because they are too stupid, of course, but also because they are cowardly. Pointing the finger at the warrior who was defeated in battle and laughing is the mark of a coward that was never on the battlefield himself. Anyone who has partook into a fighting sport at one point or another, even at an amateur level, understands what it means. You pin your strength against another man, and whether you win or lose, there is victory in that. There is bravado in that, and that is the value that you can actually take from it. Something that we can all learn from. That is that very willingness to face a tiger. And again, it's what distinguishes winners from losers, because even if hopes appear silly from an outside perspective and you don't get why someone will actually take that risk, it's because you don't understand yet the value of risk. Being a man is to take risks, is to actually go out there. As the famous statement says, a boat is safest in harbor, but that's not what a boat is for. You're supposed to go forth and sail, and if you have a shipwreck, that's fine. You can rebuild the ship and try again. But if you never set sails, guess what? You're still going to be there in 50 years and you will have accomplished absolutely nothing. And it's typically what the people who made fun of Devon don't understand. They fell before even trying. Why? Because they've defeated themselves. All the people making fun of Devon for overrating his strength missed the point. He, one, never overrated his strength. I think he knew perfectly well that he was no match for Levin. But he still had the intelligence to convince himself that he did. And again, I was listening to him. He did something very similar to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, before a fight, would be terrified, but as he would walk towards the ring, he would hype himself up. And as he stated, once he was in the ring, he was a god. He had mentally shattered his opponent and decided that he was no match for him. And therefore, he crushed them every single time before he started to have psychological problems that actually impacted directly his ability to improve his physicality and actually perform, which is interesting. It's the same for Devon. Devon, for a long time, built up Levin as this massive being and monstrous entity to be afraid of him. That fear of death, we're going to discuss later, gave him the boost and the strength to actually develop his power to resist death, to resist the tiger. But after that, he started to destroy the tiger. He started to actually shatter the identity of the tiger in his mind. He started to tell himself, that is going to be easy, I'm going to beat the guy. That is the mindset of a winner. That is what confidence is. And that's what losers don't understand. They think confidence is certainty, but that's not what it is. Confidence is the absence of certainty. That's why you need confidence. Confidence is a bullshit tactic. It's fake it till you make it. You convince yourself you're going to win, you're going to be victorious, and you are victorious. There are men in this world who will only attempt something if they know they have a 100% chance of succeeding. That is the only scenario they accept. If there is a chance of failure, they refuse. But by doing that, they have already failed because they never even attempted it in the first place. Those who are unwilling to take risks do absolutely nothing, and therefore they fail. Again, you miss every single shot that you don't take. That is an absolute truth. Devon Larratt takes every single shot that he can. Because whether you're going to win or to lose, you must give your best. This is a lesson to take to heart. Always give your best. If you think that you've lost before the bout even starts, then you have defeated yourself. The opponent didn't have to do anything. You already did the job for him. Now replace the opponent with life. So many people, their point of view and their perspective of life is, oh, it's over. Right? It's over before it even begins. They haven't even tried, but it's over. Well, guess what happens? It is actually over. It is the Pygmalion effect. It is the all self-defeating prophecy. If you have decided that you're doomed, then guess what? You are doomed. And if you have decided that you're going to be a winner, you're going to be victorious, then you will. And again, pointing the finger at those that try is the telltale sign of a mediocre mind, because the reasonable man is often a coward. Nowadays, it's very trendy to be reasonable. Don't be too extreme. Don't take any risks. Be conservative. But the issue is that you go nowhere like this. If human beings were like this, and human beings were unwilling to leave the cave to actually chase the tiger, we would still be in the caves. There would have been no evolution. The people that go forward in this life and leave a mark and make something of themselves are the people with that willingness to face a tiger. That was for the first objective. Now let's look at the second, crafty. I believe that Devon is a very crafty man, and the subtitle for this one is the smart to get it done. I said at the start that too many people look at meatheads like Devon and think, okay, they see the muscles outside, they see the red face, they see the bulging eyes and the screams, and they think, this is a primal man, this is a barbarian, there is not much to his intellect. Wrong. I think that the most frightening part of Devon is not his body, it's his brain. And the most important and impressive things about top-level athletes like Devon is always their mindset. It rarely is their body. Devon has been arm wrestling for 25 years now. That's a long-ass time. And in that time, what always amazed me is his ability to always adapt, because when you are at the top of a sport, the meta of the sport evolves. So you have to shift all the time. You can't just stick with one style. It doesn't work. People figure out the way you arm wrestle, for example, and then you can't win anymore. Devon is a chameleon. You know, he is a boa constrictor when he arm wrestles you, but if we're going to talk about reptiles, he's much closer to that cousin in the family because he always shifts, he always adapts. And every time there is a new challenge, he will find a way to face it so as to win. Because if you're just brave, okay, you face the tiger, but at the end of the day, it would be good if you could kill the tiger and actually win, because it means that you survive and get to live another day. That is the pairing, right? It's not enough just to be a warrior. You have to be an educated warrior. You have to be smart. And Devon has the two. Because every single time he is faced with a tiger, he finds a way to adapt. It doesn't always work, but he always attempts. And unlike others that surrender to their fate and accept stagnancy the second they lose, he never did. He is the type that got, again, broken in two by Simplenkov, then faced a man with a very similar style and even greater levels of strength, and still went in, unafraid, even though he knew in the past he got shattered. He tried again. He had a strategy. Did the strategy actually work? Nope. But he actually had a plan. Many people nowadays dodge Levon. Many people in the past dodged Siplenkov. It's what I told you previously. You want to avoid the opponents that might be dangerous to your career, that might actually injure you. But a champion never dodges. A champion actually faces these enemies head on because he learns from them. It's what Devon Larratt calls the lightning rod, where he believes that he can actually sap the strength of an opponent and absorb some of their power if he arm wrestles them. Every single time he loses, he learns. And this is how you become great, even in lifting. Every time you fuck up in the gym, instead of just saying, oh, I got injured, it's terrible, it's the end of my life, take personal responsibility and think, why did I do wrong and what can I do better next time? Don't be one of these doomers that is going to get hurt one time doing deadlifts and now deadlifts are evil, never deadlift. It's simply not the way it works. Instead, you have to adapt because adaptation is evolution, and the people that survive are the people who evolve always. Stagnancy is death. In life, if you stagnate and your skills don't evolve, you might as well just jump in a coffin because your life is already over. One of my favorite quotes is from Isaac Neterov, and the quote goes as follows. A man that refuses to accept challenges is a man that is already dead. Don't dodge the challenges, but when you approach the challenges, be smart. Because if you manage to be as crafty as Devon is, you're going to have the ability to always find a way to get what you want. As I told you, the part that scares me the most about Larratt is his brain. Because from what I learned from him, sometimes it's wisdom, sometimes it's just motivation, but the type of videos that always strike a chord with me are the ones where he talks about training. Even though it's arm wrestling training, it has jack shit to do with bodybuilding, he always presents it in a way where I think, man, the methods of this man, there is a method to his madness. It's very sinister in a sense because I would hate to be this guy's opponent. There's no risk because he would destroy me in 2 seconds, but if I were at his level, I would think, man, I'm going to have to face Larratt and he's going to have something in stock for me. And you see that with the videos he shares because he's not shy with actually sharing his method. So examples that I have is, for example, the balloon hands, the corn-fed pumps, the way of the giant pumpkins. All names, by the way, that sound like anime character special attacks. Like, way of the giant pumpkin! And then something happens. Like, his arms, like, he goes like this and the arms explode and he becomes gigantic and now he fights with like 3 times as much power. It's something you could see in Dragon Ball Z, right? These names came from that guy's brain. And if you listen to just the name, you think, okay, that's silly as fuck. Like, corn-fed pumps, what the fuck is this? You eat corn and then you get a pump? Yeah, it sounds stupid, but look at the results. The guy gained an inch on his arms doing the way of the giant pumpkin. And for the people who are actually curious, the way of the giant pumpkin entails the idea that if you train only one arm and you neglect the other, not only is the one arm going to grow faster, but the other arm is also going to grow. And actually, Devon proved it, so it fucking works. As a bodybuilder, I will never do that because it's going to create imbalances, but the method actually functions. And that is the way of the giant pumpkin. I actually encourage you to visit his channel. It's a treasure trove. You're going to learn a lot from this guy, even though he doesn't teach about bodybuilding. You will sadly learn more about bodybuilding from him and his methods than you would from an actual bodybuilding channel run by a pro bodybuilder. Just saying, I'm not going to shit on pro bodybuilding today, but all these silly names I just shared have very real intent behind them and concrete goals. Because anyone who desires to catch his prey needs a plan. And that's why I said there's a method to the madness. Look at the way arm wrestlers train. Like du papier à musique, it's like to the millimeter. Nothing is random. They know exactly what they do on what day. Volume, intensity, frequency is on fucking point. And I say that because too many people are going to mistake the development of a brutish and massive body with just going intense and having no plan. Like it's supposedly correlated. Like the biggest people are the ones that just give it their all with no actual plan or strategy. That's not how it works. Even for natural bodybuilding, all the top naturals on YouTube Fitness plan their program. You cannot just wing it. Look at Devon Larratt, he doesn't just wing it. The guy has a very rigid schedule. He trains 5 to 7 times a day. He knows exactly what he's going to do every single day, and he's going to develop a certain skill every single time. And there are a lot of videos actually on his channel where he explains these methods. My favorite being Hook Training 1 and 2, where you have that simple title and you click and it's a guy doing curls with like 100 kilos. Partial curls with a lot of body English, but curls nonetheless. Or you have, for example, advanced strap. Advanced strap is just a video of Devon Larratt who is going to hang on a strap and is going to explain to you why he does it. And as you listen to him, you think, Jesus Christ, can you imagine being the guy that is going to have to face that? He set up an entire strap system on his doorway just to face one dude. What is this guy not willing to do? Well, I would say nothing. And the worst part is that, again, he has a method. He also always knows the way he is going to cook you. He has his prey exactly where he wants it.
It's important to say because for most people nowadays, their biggest enemy is their brain. The issue is not that they have bad genetics, it's that they believe they have bad genetics, and therefore they impose limits on themselves. This is why Devon's no limit mantra is so important, is because you can have all of the gifts in the world. If you believe you don't have them, you're fucked, you fucked yourself. And then even worse than that, even if you somehow manage to not set limitations on yourself, if you don't have a method to achieve your goals, it's all for nothing. You can't be a dummy, you can't lock your way into achieving your dreams. You have to have both no limitations, the bravery and courage to believe in your dreams and to go after them, to not make up excuses, to not believe in a natural limit that doesn't fucking exist, and also a mean. How are you gonna get there, Buster? If you can't answer that question and if you can't have the proper mindset to start with, you're never going to go anywhere.
That is the second lesson and the second wisdom we can actually directly absorb from Devon Larratt. It's that craftiness. Try to be a crafty son of a bitch. Always be one step ahead. One step ahead of your enemies, but also of life. Always have a plan. The man that doesn't have a plan is just going to end up going nowhere for a very simple reason. It isn't enough to have a drive, because if you don't have a direction, you'll simply get lost. Oh, it's very nice to drive like straight forward, but where are you going? Where are you going, bud? Let's say you're swimming. If you don't lift your head out of the water to see where you're going, you're just going to swim in circles in the sea. And I see too many people do that in training, but in life in general. They approach life like hareheads. They don't know where they're going. Oh, they just let destiny carry them. Or guess what? Destiny is going to carry you nowhere. Because destiny don't exist. Destiny is what we make of it. You decide your destiny. Destiny is a wind. So yes, there is a momentum and a potential fate that exists outside of your control. You don't control the winds, but you control the way you spread your wings. You control the way you orient your body. That is a very important lesson. So that is for number 2. We have being brave and being crafty. And the third one is my favorite, and that is being deranged. Because Devon Larratt is deranged. He's a maniac, he's a lunatic. And that is what makes him great, because it's what unites these two qualities. Because you could have a man that is very brave, and you could have a man that is very crafty, and that is someone that is already quite complete. But if you like that spark of pure insanity, you're not going to make it. The crazy ones are the ones that make it the furthest because they're willing to do anything. And that willingness is something that I've learned with time is not always found in the places people think. Again, it's not intensity, it's not taking uncalculated risks. It's taking daily risk that might put you in danger, but always get you at the brink of that danger and doing that again and again and again until you die. It's the same for bodybuilding. The guy that is going to have the best physique is not the guy that trains intensely once a week. It's not the guy that trains super smart 3 times a week. It's the guy that trains very smart and very intense 5 times a week. That is the guy that is going to make it. And therefore, you have to have that spark. And that spark I describe with the following subtitle: the desire to die in battle, a desire that Devon possesses. Now, let's talk about that desire. Because outside of arm wrestling, Devon was also special forces. And therefore, he has a very intimate relationship with death, right? We're talking real special forces, okay? No LARPing here. He was actually in battle, he got injured in battle, it's all verified. And it's interesting because when you carry that energy and that mindset into arm wrestling, there is no wonder why he's such a psycho and why he's so crafty as well. The guy has strategy in his blood, he has bravery in his blood. And I think that this close relationship with death is very interesting because to him, dying in battle was a real possibility. I think that nowadays, and it's something I'm guilty of with bodybuilders or powerlifters, we talk about being a warrior, or we're talking about being battling the iron, we're facing the iron, we're willing to die in the gym. But is that real? Or is that just empty bravado? Because at the end of the day, my bros, I just did curls with 100 pounds. I was at no risk of dying. Like worst case scenario, I tear a bicep, but I was never afraid of dying in the gym because it's just not that type of environment, right? And it's good to have that warrior mindset. But at some point, you have to humble yourself and look at someone who actually was in these situations. And that's Devon. And that's why we have something to learn from him, because he was quoted to say that he contemplates his own mortality on a daily basis. And he actually started as a kid. And I think that this is the mark of someone who from a young age had wisdom. Because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, the last thing I wanted to contemplate was my own death. I was playing Pokemon, I was catching Pikachu, and that was pretty much that. I was playing Beyblade with my friends, that's it. Death was something that wasn't even entering the realm of possibilities in my brain. Devon was already facing death. And there is wisdom in that. Actually, there is great wisdom in that, because if we look at philosophy, for example, both the samurai, so the Agakure, for example, and the code of the samurai, so the Bushido, and the Stoics, which are completely different cultures, preached the importance of contemplating one's own mortality. The samurai will tell you that upon waking up, you need to take time to reflect on your own death. You need to picture yourself dying from illness, from being struck by a bow, from falling off a cliff, etc., every single day of your life. That is a very important type of meditation. And the reason why it is so important is because you must picture your own death and see this life as nothing but a dream. Because if you accept the imminence of death and the permanence of death also, you will come to accept the fact that this life is not permanent either, and that it's only a fleeting thing, just like a dream. When you wake up from a dream, the dream is over and that is it. And I want to stop for a second here and warn you from a type of interpretation I see too many people actually fall for. And that is thinking that this is a form of nihilism, like saying nothing matters. Oh, life is just a dream, so nothing matters. No. You got it all wrong. It's the exact opposite. Because life is just a dream, then everything matters, because you only have this much time left. So you must make the best out of everything. It's why the samurai, who was constantly in battle, risking his life every day, contemplated his own death. It's because once you can make peace with that fact, you're going to realize that the time that you spend living is important, it is precious to you. I would go as far as to say that those men that don't actually contemplate their own death aren't real living, because you need to die inside to be able to live. And those that have never died don't really live. They are already dead. So it's an actual exercise I encourage you to do. It is not comfortable, but that is the point. Since a man who becomes at peace with his mortality doesn't welcome it, he simply accepts his inevitability. That's also a misinterpretation. We don't contemplate death because we want to die. It's the opposite. And Devon Larratt was also quoted to say that he hates death. But why therefore does he contemplate it? What is the point? Well, it's because he hates it so much. He reminds himself of how much he hates it, and that allows him to fight death. And what is fighting death? Living his life to the fullest. So, if you're the type of person that struggles to find a meaning in life, that struggles to find this inspiration, this fire, there it is. Your fire is to be found in your grave, in your soon-to-be grave, because once you realize that at some point you will return to ashes, you will finally find that willingness to be something else than a living corpse. Too many people are living corpses because they haven't accepted the fact that one day they will be actual corpses. So integrate that, contemplate your mortality, and do as Devon. Devon who, by constantly reminding himself that there is no avoiding death, has transformed his life into an experience, a full experience where he makes the most out of it. And that is what makes it so meaningful. It's why the Stoics and the samurai were preaching that. They didn't want to depress people, they were doing the exact opposite. It is truly a philosophy of life, of embracing life. throughout life, his whole life, Devon wanted to fight. He was always interested in that. And this is why I also see him as a modern samurai. You know, his motto, no limits, is in direct correlation with these types of philosophies. Because as I said previously, no limits is not something as silly as just never losing. It would be too simple. No limits is simply the refusal of letting anything restrain you. It is the belief and the desire, most importantly, of expanding the self. And that desire soon translates into the desire to die in battle. Because if you're going to refuse limits, you're also going to refuse death. But no one can refuse death. We're all going to die one day. So what do you do instead? You are going to refuse the ability of death to scare you. You're going to push away the fear of death. And how do you do that? You seek it. You challenge it. You enter situations like the tough matches he entered where one, you're not at risk of dying, you are at risk of losing. You are at risk of coming close to something that anyone who actually took risk is going to encounter at some point. And that is what makes life worth living. Because Devon believes that that type of fight, that type of struggle, you come close to death, is the highest expression of the human spirit. And it can be arm wrestling, it can be close quarter battles, it can be bodybuilding. I don't know. Find in your life this thing. It's a theme I expressed in the past when I spoke about Draco's Grizzly. Struggle, pain, challenges. These are the words that you must seek. Seek the tiger and face him with all the craftiness and the crazy deranged mindset that you can summon in your mind. And that is what is going to make a life worth living. And so, by wishing to die in battle, this Devon Larratt guy that apparently hates death, he in truth doesn't call for death, because it would be nonsensical. Rather, he invites a situation so dangerous that it puts him on the verge of losing what is most precious, aka his life, which makes it that much more special. If your life has value, then by default, if you engage in situations where you're about to lose it, you're going to fight that much harder to preserve it. Whereas, if you think that life has no meaning, chances are contemplating your death is not going to mean anything to you because death is not that different from life. And therefore, it's the type of philosophy that is directly opposed to nihilism. Because nihilism is limitation. If you say that nothing matters, that is the most abject limitation you can impose on the self, because now you're going to do nothing. But if you say everything matters, now you opened up the field of possibilities. Now you have a positive outcome on life. A positive outcome that came from contemplating your own death. Isn't philosophy funny? This is why I love it so much personally, and why people like Devon are actually incredible advocates for that type of mentality, even though they might not know it themselves, although I suspect that Devon is actually a very well-read man. And so, things like close quarter battle, arm wrestling, monsters of calibers outside of human perspectives, or even going dojo yaburi, which is something that Devon has been known of doing. And it's also the reason why I say he's a modern samurai. The guy went on the road, and by on the road I mean with his own 2 feet, and he walked from town to town, walked into the nearest arm wrestling bar, and just like challenged the strongest guy there, beat him and left. That's shit that people in Japan were doing 1,000 years ago. Like, samurai were going from town to town and challenge the strongest samurai of the town, and they would leave. Or they would challenge the dojo of the town, and they would take like something from the dojo as a sign that they just beat them. It's a literal modern warrior mindset. And actually, I'm working on developing a manifesto for the modern warrior, and it's going to include this willingness to do something crazy, because you have to be deranged. You're Devon Larratt, you're the #1 arm wrestler in the world. You have, I suspect, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, and one day you decide, you know what, I'm just going to go on my merry way with my own 2 feet, and I'm going to go from town to town. Actually, at some point, he was talking about doing that for a year. Going dojo yaburi for a year. By himself. The guy is mentally unstable, and this is why he is so great. He has that spark of craziness. And it's that spark of craziness that serves the purpose to make him great. Since all of these things I described, all of these risk-taking endeavors, all serve the same purpose. To find what you love and to let it kill you. Another quotation that is dear to Devon's heart. And I think that this is the perfect way to conclude this episode. This is also what I want you to do. Learn from the wisdom of this man. Find the one thing that you love so much that even if it were to take your life, you would be fine with it. And once that is done, I think that you're going to be very happy. Just like I'm very happy, and just like I think Devon is very happy himself, because in wisdom is to be true happiness. And I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.